Hey guys, how you doing? It's Deepak Shukla here from Pearl Lemon, and welcome to this video that's going to walk you through one aspect of what we do from a link building perspective. So today we're going to be talking about the world of Web 2.0 links. And if you're looking at this video, you might have some questions just generally about our link building strategies at Pearl Lemon, how we build links, why we build links, the way we build links, and the value of them. So in the first instance, if you haven't looked at it already, this is a relatively good, let's say, document that talks about ultimately how we build links. It's 43 pages, and at last count, it's 8,200 words. So there's some decent insights to gain and garner from there. And as a company that generates 300 plus B2B inquiries on a monthly basis, I definitely say that there's proof in the pudding when it comes to ultimately our link building methodology, certainly because the way that we build links for ourselves is also the way that we'll build links for you. And today we're talking specifically about the world of Web 2.0 links. So Web 2.0 links are ultimately, in the easiest sense, links that you can get for free for yourself without needing to contact a journalist, a blogger, a site admin, a editor, or anything of that ilk. Examples of it would be include, but not limited to, sites such as Blogger, sites such as Tumblr, sites such as Reddit, sites such as Imgur, and so on and so forth, as you can see here. So a couple of things right out of the gate. These sites are all high authority websites from a, depending upon what metric that you prefer, domain reputation, domain authority, depending upon which site that you use to monitor SEO growth, whether it's Ahrefs, whether it's SEMrush, whether it's Moz, whether it's Majestic, or whether it's indeed an entirely different software tool that's come up on the scene or otherwise. And that's one thing out of the gate that these sites do have in common. So whilst these sites, for example, Imgur, let's take this example, whilst this site might not be directly relevant to, for example, the business that you're in, from a Google perspective, it definitely is relevant from them understanding that Imgur is a business that's got a lot of traffic, a lot of ultimately authority, and has been around for a little bit more than a while. So to that end, it really helps improve your branded network strength. So what I mean by that is that one of the ways that Google will identify a business as being around to stay is how long has that website been in business. So if we separate, for example, your web entities as different from your legal entities. So if we went, for example, to Pearl Lemon Limited, you'll find us probably on Companies House right here. Okay, so that's, for example, from a civic or governmental perspective, a indication of whether a company exists. But this website specifically and the information that it houses in regards to our limited company structure, our financial filings, as well as our company directors, so on and so forth, is entirely separate to the way that Google, and that's where our actual accountancy address is, that's entirely separate to where Google understands Pearl Lemon as a entity and as a brand, as you can see here. Very, very different search ultimately. This one has 1,600 searches a month. The other one has 0. So there you go. So this is a really good précis into why, in general, building these sites, or building rather links on these sites that seem seemingly unrelated, does actually carry some weight and have some currency. And by being able to build links on sites like this at scale to some degree, you then connect these sites to each other by potentially pointing them to, for example, your TLD, your top level domain. And in this way, you create a branded network, i.e. a network of websites that are all branded, that all point towards the home, HQ, the company's top level domain. And to that extent, it's a good way to signify to Google that, okay, great, this is a business in terms of its web entities that has a presence online. It's featured and or listed on sites that we already recognize prior to recognizing, for example, the parent company in this case, or the parent website, which would be in our case Pearl Lemon. And therefore, we've got a decent inkling that it is here to stay. So generally speaking, that's a reason for why building links that are Web 2.0 in nature really is a useful practice overall. Now, the second question that I'd probably have if I was yourself is this for example, an outdated strategy in general? And the answer simply is no. The reasons and rationale behind that is those sites still carry domain authority in Google's eyes. Those sites ultimately are sites where, to a large degree, you do have some relevancy upon, because there might be some of your users who are searching on sites like Imgur. That's the second element of it. The third element of it, of course, is that we're interested ultimately in the game of Google recognition, and Google at large is run algorithmically rather than by humans. There are algorithms that are built for humans or with that intent. But when we ultimately think about the checking of any individual URL that's crawled, it's done by robots. Those robots, of course, are designed by humans, but it is done by robots. So what we pay attention to is what actually works as being connected to, but to some degree separate to, what is the popular opinion that's voiced. So one of the examples would be, I think here, this is from John Mueller. This was in 2020. He calls Web 2.0 style links spammy. And of course, there's a lot of information which I'd encourage you to have a look at in general as a point of reading. And one of the things that we'd consider with elements like this, that Web 2.0 style links that are built just singularly without any other links alongside it to complement it, or Web 2.0 links that are built badly alongside any other links to not complement it, tend to not work very well. Much in the same way that two people can bake a cake. If one of them gets the ingredient stack incorrect, then you can come out with a really bitter or an overly sweet tasting cake or a really burnt cake. There's lots of different variations of what's bad. And generally speaking, there's a pretty singular overall version of what's good, with a lesser degree of variance. The variance is being okay, good to great. And in those instances, great ultimately in the end is website traffic, because that's what we're looking for as the end goal. And website traffic that can be ultimately sustainable over time. So that's some of the considerations. And we look at building Web 2.0 still, because Web 2.0s do fundamentally work. You can take a look at the backlink profiles of many websites, and you'll find that there are Web 2.0 links that have been built across a lot of them. So in terms of from a commonality perspective, you'll see, and this is evidence here somewhere in the ultimately FAQs probably, you'd need to have a look through here. I'd absolutely encourage you to read this 8,000 word document that goes into a lot more detail than this video can cover, but there's lots of evidence of authority websites that have been ultimately powered to a degree in part by Web 2.0 links. And to that end, I want to give you a real live working example that's correct as of the recording of this video from a site that we're building links for. So this is a competitor to Typeform, Paperform, Jotform, Google Forms. It's an online form builder. There's probably more form builders out there, but this is the site that at the moment I think is, from a search perspective, maybe 4 to 5 months old from the link building side of it. And I want to share with you ultimately a couple of just examples of the core proof of what Web 2.0 singularly can do for a website. So here we have the growth of the site in general. I want you to notice the trend line. July the 11th, it looks like more or less the site began to get its first clicks organically. We fast forward to ultimately October the 10th, so 3 months, over a 3 month period, the site got October the 10th, 71 clicks. If we look at that from a performance metric standpoint, it's got 1,520 clicks that have been tracked and registered overall. If we look at the last 28 days, just to get a sense of what that means recently in real time, it's 1,000 clicks in the last 28 days. So we're looking at more than a 5x growth in traffic. As you can see, the click-through rate has gone up as well. The average positions have gone up. If you have a look at the terms, they're extremely relevant. If we just look at the word, for example, form as a query, to have a look at how relevant is this traffic, because it's a form builder, it's gone from 83 clicks to 634 clicks. So that gives you a real indication of ultimately what's going on. we jump in now to Ahrefs to have a look at what's going on, this site's got a DR of less than 1. So if you know anything about SEO, a common metric for success is domain reputation. This will ultimately demonstrate that it isn't the singularly most important thing, and that it really is actually more about ultimately the quality of the link building as well as the quality of the content that you build. As you can see, this is a domain that was older. Or the site owners rather, purchased it not too long ago. Let's give it a Whois lookup to have a look at the site up form, and it will tell us of the purchase history. So we'll just wait for this to load. Shouldn't be listed for sale. Oh, the irony. But it's 842 days old, so it was bought on the July 2020. It was bought July 2020. And link building really begun pretty much recently. If you have a look at here, you'll see that link building began in earnest from the looks of it, February. So February 2020, it's been probably an 8-month period of just building based upon, let's have a look at the last year to give that some context. As you can see now, it looks like from here, February 2022, links begun to be built. And as you can see, it's got 24 referring domains and in Ahrefs 323 organic keywords that it's ranking for. So and probably the vast majority are in the States. Yeah. So this really hopefully should give you a good sense of what is possible with Web 2.0 links. And there are other examples that we can share of this at sites that have had very little links built other than Web 2.0s. So let's now jump into a different element of this, which is probably the next question I'd want to ask, which is what is the difference, for example, with building links via Pearl Lemon versus buying them on Fiverr for $5 or $20, and the difference and differentiation. So there's a couple of things I think that is worth knowing just from an implementation perspective that does make Web 2.0 links built. Web 2.0 links can be built very badly, of course, like anything can be built very badly. Guest post or a feature that you get in The Guardian or Times could be built badly because the link is buried at the bottom of an article underneath 3 or 4 other links, which dilutes the power of that link. Actually, you could assume it goes down by 5 to 15% per link. So the links at the bottom become way less valuable than the links at the top. Links could also be mistakenly no-followed. Links could point to your HTTP version of your website rather than the HTTPS. Your link could also just be broken. It could point to a temporary URL. It could have all manner of ultimate problems. It could point to a subdomain rather than your top level domain. You could have a naked URL. You could have a mention without a link. So there's some examples of challenges that you could get with links that are really, objectively good links from The Guardian or Forbes. So links can be built badly on any platform. So that's just the first thing to recognize. And the challenge that comes in with, for example, a platform like Fiverr is that there's no incentive for the actual vendor that you're working with to think about the long-term health of your website. These types of relationships are typically transactional. These types of relationships aren't built with ultimately quality in mind, but rather quantity, because the nature of Fiverr means that for anyone to earn a living, they have to do things at scale. What comes with that scale is poor output, poor quality of links built, no recognition or understanding of how different Web 2.0s are important for different niches, no looking at data quantitatively as well as qualitatively over time to understand which links are more powerful than others, no looking back historically upon links that have been built with a view to seeing what needs to be replaced, no looking at links that are removed, links that have been broken, link quality dilution, no real look at your current website's backlink profile, no looking at any of the just publicly available guidelines that relate to toxic links via disavow checking in SEMrush, in Ahrefs, and other tools as well. None of these checks happen. No understanding of how these links can be built at ultimately a tier 2 and a tier 3 level potentially with, and we'll come to talk about this in a minute, in terms of building tiered link structures and no real connection or cohesion with your ongoing content as well as keyword strategy. So when you think about it in those terms, which are largely objectively true, the quality and the output that you'll get from Fiverr is night and day. And I use Fiverr, it could be from any vendor that you prefer, as compared to working on your project with an agency such as Pearl Lemon, because we've got our brand, our reputation, and of course, ultimately your results that we wish to stand behind and stand, on top of when we produce a great result for you. So all of these things become ultimately important when you're thinking about which vendor to get Web 2.0 links from. Now, Web 2.0 links, like anything built in Singularity, can lead to lots of problems for ultimately your site, as well as your backlink profile, as well as ultimately the future growth and success of your company when done incorrectly and when done without an understanding of what it is that we're trying to do. Much in the same way that someone going to the gym without training, without consultation, can get to a certain level, but there's always a limitation on what they're able to do, unless, of course, you go through the arduous journey of trial and error and damage and destruction. And these things just aren't viable if the toy or the guinea pig that you have in hand is the business that you're potentially banking to build a whole life around, or a career around, or ultimately even a side hustle, depending upon what our relationship and this business that we're working upon, or this website that we're working upon, means for you. So with all of those elements in mind, it means that the level and quality of links that we build are far superior to anything that you'll find ultimately out there from a link buying service directly. We know also, because we buy links from these sites from time to time, because we want to know what's out there. We want to know what it is that they're doing. We want to still check if ultimately what they're doing isn't a reflection of what we're doing and how poor it is. And also just to see from time to time, is there any value, which typically holds at the 1 to 8% level, that we can glean from something that they have done. And those are some of the key differences between the way that we build Web 2.0 links versus the way that anyone else builds Web 2.0 links. It ultimately can also help you diversify your backlink profile, because building links in one area, much like going to the gym and only working on your pecs or your chest or your back, is going to lead to disproportional results on and across your torso as well as your website, and that can lead to problems down the line, whether it's penalizations, limited growth, and the other challenges that are associated with it. Furthermore, the reality, and we'll go now and talk about ultimately link rot being a problem, it means that your link building profile, or the links that you acquire, ultimately over the time, all of them, 100% of them over time, will decay. The easiest way to think about it is that if you're on a timeline over the course of 100 years, will that link that you have on the BBC still be there in 100 years? The reality, or the likelihood, is probably not. The internet has not even been around that long. So if you work on the basis that in 100 years, even 10 years, 50% of your links will be gone, that means that you need to continually replace all of those links on and in a timely fashion. Now, the link on the BBC can, of course, lead to other links being generated, because you get some recognition, potentially, depending upon the link that you get in and from the BBC. But the reality is that the core difference between the link on the BBC and a link that you can get from a site such as Imgur, as an example, is that you are the ultimate owner of that profile on Imgur. So your success relates to the continuation of Imgur as a business, as opposed to you are not in control of that link on the BBC. It is not your link. A link has been placed there, and at any given time, should the needs of the BBC change or adjust, that link can be removed without any regard or any notification or any control from yourself. So when you think of it in those terms, you are able to leverage more power from Web 2.0 links specifically than the actual BBC link. Now, both links are important. Definitely the BBC link, in terms of ultimate value, is more powerful than the Web 2.0 link. But because of these issues, that link rot is real, that you can't control, have any say ultimately on how they implement that link onto the site. Did they make some of the errors that we mentioned previously with a HTTP link instead of a HTTPS? Was the link that they sent to incorrect? Did you want to change the article or the description? All of those things ultimately are possible, but only after getting approval from a gatekeeper. On a site such as Imgur or otherwise, you are your own gatekeeper. The only other gatekeep is your ability to maintain an active profile on that website if you meet their terms and conditions and or community guidelines, as well as the actual continuation of that website and that web entity as a business as separate from the legal entity of that business. So the other element of it now that's important is talking about the tiered structures. So one of the challenges that often happens in the world of link building is that indexation and links being crawled and then indexed and then rewarded is a real problem. So let's just go through what we mean by that. So a link being indexed means that you appear within the Google index. So Google becomes aware that there's another ultimately URL that exists, for example, on the site of Pearl Lemon. Okay. Now that can happen via the sitemap. So if we go all the way to the bottom, I think we've got a link to our sitemap. So you could submit an updated sitemap, and on that sitemap, it will contain ultimately your link. So in that way, a link can be indexed by yourself, and then hopefully Google indexes that website, or rather that link itself. If we go to this link and take a look at it, I believe it will redirect us to Pearl Lemon interviews. So this is an example of a link that's indexed. So the other element of it now is that link needs to be crawled. Now, once that link is crawled, Google will begin to potentially then reward that URL. Now, the problem that comes into play is that there are many ultimately links that are not indexed and that are not crawled, and this can happen for a whole combination of reasons. So let's just Google indexing problem Google SEO. Let's just Google it to give you confirmed indexing issue affecting a large number of websites, ongoing issue with its search index, top 14 reasons why Google isn't indexing your site. And you can see that Google indexing issues 590. You can see that ultimately this is an area that's becoming a bigger and bigger problem, because ultimately the bots cannot keep up with the amount of content that is being produced anymore. So there's going to be a big and growing indexing blackout. There's going to be significant problems with indexing that are only going to grow as we move into 2023 and onwards. So to that end, one of the other elements that becomes problematic is that if, for example, in the BBC example, that the BBC builds a page that's an orphan page, it contains no internal links that go to it, that page is standing upon its own, upon a precipice, and it's got no supporting structures. Now, with Web 2.0 links, you can, if, for example, your website is the site we want to link to, and then the first tier is the BBC, at a second tier, you can build some of these Web 2.0 links to point towards the actual independent piece or pillar that sits upon the BBC, and thus give it some supporting stratas. Those Web 2.0 links can speed up the indexation, the crawling, the indexation, and the recognition and therefore reward of your BBC mention by tactically pointing some Web 2.0 links at that actual URL. We've seen it, we've done it, and it works. And to that end, I'll show you an example of an Oasis Living report, because I want to go into the second element that becomes important. The other element that's practical, here we go, is, and this is an end of month report, is that you're also going to have on a monthly basis a number of links on your own website, blogs, for example, that you want to build links towards, but it's impractical to do the kind of email reach out, bartering, WhatsApp chats, whatever it might be, to acquire links across your sites or your site, because you simply don't have the manpower or resources to build earned links each time. So by looking at the Web 2.0 space, you can, as you can see, build or point links directly at ultimately a blog that you're trying to build. And as you can see, we've worked on Oasis Living blog section, Notice a Landlord, and here is the improvement. It's gone from 0 to 1,400 impressions. It's gone from 0 to 12 clicks. And this has been done by the use of powerful Web 2.0s. So that is the other advantage that you do have when it comes to Web 2.0 links, that you can tactically deploy them across specific web URLs on your website to ultimately get a little bit more traction when it comes to that ultimately URL getting a reward. So that, and I don't know if that's completely exhaustive, but should give you some keen insights into how we think about Web 2.0 links across ultimately your business, why we think Web 2.0 links are of value, evidence of Web 2.0 links working at a pretty fabulous scale for one of our sites, Upform, and why it is a crucial and integral part of ultimately your link building process. And where there's any detail that I've missed, there's this link building guide that we've got that we share to any of our clients. It's 43 pages, 8,000 words. And just looking at the Upform site, just to give you a little bit of proof, this is last updated 12 days ago, as you can see from the timestamp. And you'll see if you look at some of our links that we build, it's Pastebin, Giphy, Polygon, Trello, Patreon, and Informa. We've got some social bookmarks. We've got direct Web 2.0 submissions. We've got some PDFs. And as you can see, we're tactically building links carefully and clearly on a monthly basis, subject to specific metrics that we look at, which relate to ultimately DA, DR, backlink profile, organic traffic, quality score metrics, and also our understanding of which Web 2.0s work with which websites. Because as you'll notice from this, it's not the case that we put out 200 links, which you could easily buy from Fiverr. There's in total 6, 21, 28, plus 7, which is 35 links that have been built. So we build them carefully, we build them on an ongoing and monthly basis, and we do this with a view to the longevity of the growth of the website, and ultimately based upon the experience that we've got from this style of link building across the board, outside of all of the other elements that we look at when it comes to link building. So I want to also finish up by saying that these aren't the only kinds of links that we build. There are multiple other types of links that we can build and that we do build. And I'd encourage you to look at other elements of ultimately your report, or go over to go over to YouTube, and you could just search link building, Pearl Lemon, SEO, and you will find, as you can see, Link Building 2022, Devs for Devs Link Building. And here we go, Introduction to 119 Days of Link Building. And you'll find on our SEO channel, there's me, our founder, 117, 130, 147 videos dedicated to the art of link building in general. And if we just go in and jump in here quickly, I'll just pause that. You'll see that it's a pretty exhaustive list when it comes to ultimately other elements of link building. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that answers many of your questions. And that is a guide to, or at least some insight into, why Web 2.0 links do work and how we think about them at Pearl Lemon. Thank you.